ஒரு நிமிஷம் இது பண்ணி விட முடியுமா? நம்ம வீடியோ பார்க்கற அந்த டேக் போட்டு விட்டுருங்க.
Sorry, audio கேக்குங்களா? My audio is visible, audible?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
ஹலோ சார், எப்படி இருக்கீங்க? இருக்கிறேன் சார். நீங்க எப்படி இருக்கீங்க? நல்லா இருக்கீங்களா? நல்லா இருக்கோம் சார். குட் மார்னிங் மேடம். ஜானகி எப்படி இருக்கீங்க? சொல்லுங்க, நீங்க தான் சொல்லணும். நல்லா இருக்கோம். எப்படி போயிட்டு இருக்கு? என்ன மேடம், ட்ரைனிங்ல பயங்கர கலக்குறீங்களா மேடம்? ரூபி மேடம்
Sir, you have been a co-host now, so you can allow the people who you want to join, sir, for this program.
Okay, thank you. 180 registered in சொன்னீங்க, only 34 have joined.
Sir, all are listening from the class, sir. Most of the people.
Okay, okay.
From around 5 countries are participating, sir, now.
Excellent.
5 countries: Malawi, Indonesia, India, UK, and Vietnam.
Okay.
And apart from that, the institution are around 15.
Right.
Like actually நம்ம லாகின் ஆனாலே தெரிஞ்சிரும்.
லாகின் பண்ணி தெரிஞ்சிரும். பட் உங்களுக்கு
காமிச்சிட்டா
ஏன்டா நீங்கள் குரூப்பில் போடுங்க, நீங்கள் திருப்பி ஏன்னா நான் 39 தான் வந்திருக்குன்னு சொல்கிறாரு. தெரியலையே. அதை நீங்கள் யாராவது பொறுப்பெடுத்துங்க. நான் ஞான்ராஜ் நீங்கள் எடுத்துக்கங்க. அவர் சொல்கிற விஷயத்தை நீங்கள் எடுத்துக்கங்க. இங்கே வந்து மியூட் பண்ண சொல்லுங்க, எதுவும் போயிடாம வெளியே மியூட். பியூலாவை மட்டும் பண்ணுங்க. பியூலா மட்டும் அவங்க ப்ரெசன்ட் பண்ணுறாங்க. ஷேர் பண்ணுறாங்களா? என்ன ஷேர் பண்ணுறாங்க? அப்போ ஆன் பண்ணுங்க சொல்லிடுறேன்.
இதுக்கு
என்னன்னு கேட்டு
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants. Observance of World Social Work Day 2023. Issues in social work, a cross-national discussion. A program organized by Edge Hill University and Periyar Maniamai University, jointly with Madras School of Social Work and Academy of Prisons and Correctional Administration, will start in another 5 minutes. We request all the participants to keep your video and audio in mute, and at the end of the session we are having an interaction session. During that time you can post your questions or suggestions in the chat box, and if you also want to interact with the students from UK, or if the students from UK want to interact with Indian students, the interaction session will be the time for you, and you can share your knowledge, and at the same time you can also give suggestion, and if you have any doubts or if you have any questions, you can definitely ask, and the students will be having a good interaction. And apart from that, the experts who are joining us today will also be answering for the questions. So this is the instruction from the organizing team. Thank you. Just to check with the audio, Stanley sir, is I am audible from here?
Yes, loud and clear, no problem.
Thank you, sir. One more announcement for the participants. If there is any problem in joining the Zoom meeting, we have shared the YouTube link also. You can also share with your friends, and in the YouTube also you can post your questions, and that will also be answered. Thank you.
Anand, I think two of my colleagues, Paul Rimmer and Kieran Murphy, are yet to join us.
Has joined, sir? Have they joined, sir?
I think they are yet to join us.
Okay, okay, sir. So, kindly tell us when we have to start, sir. We will wait.
No, we'll start exactly at 10 or 1 minute past 10.
Thank you, sir.
What we can do is, if Nigel and Beulah agree, we can have their session first, and then we can, if Paul and Dr. Raja Samuel is here, so Paul Rimmer and Kieran, if they come in a bit late, we can have their sessions later. But let's start on time because we need to end by 12.
Okay, sure, sir.
Here's Selwyn, just to make you aware.
Hello, Paul.
Morning.
Morning. I think it's just Kieran we need to wait for.
Dear participants, the YouTube link is also shared in the chat box. If you want to share with your colleagues or your friends, you can share now. Thank you. So shall we start the program?
Yes, Anand, I think we can start. We'll have the issues in social work education first, and if Kieran Murphy joins us, he can speak next, and then we'll go on to the practice session.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything you want to say, Anand, or shall I start?
Yes, sir. I am starting, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the friends who have joined for this program, online and offline. Greetings from Periyar Maniyamai Institute of Science and Technology, and I also wish all the professional social workers on this day of observing World Social Work Day 2023. And the theme of this year is respecting diversity through joint social action. So I think this year we are also having a diverse group of people who have joined from various parts of the globe, and the registered participants were around 180, majorly students, and we have participants from almost 5 countries. To mention, it's Malawi, Indonesia, India, UK, and Vietnam. And however, I think few of the more people will be joining from different countries. And almost 15 institutions, both social work educational institutions and non-government organization and practitioners are also the participants in this group. And to mention few from India, there were people, particularly from the prison department and correctional administration from India, who have joined in this program. And I should mention that in the year 2021, we observed this World Social Work Day, and in that time we had resource person, the head of the department from Edge Hill University, who has given a keynote address on that day. And that program we organized with the resource persons from 7 different countries from the globe. And this time we are having 2 countries, particularly the organizing team is Edge Hill University and Periyar Maniyamai Institute of Science and Technology, Vallam, Tamil Nadu, South India. And I also proudly want to inform that it is a jointly organized program with Madras School of Social Work, a renowned social work institution in our India, and also the Academy of Prisons and Correctional Administration, a apex level body in our correctional administration, has also joined to make this program a successful program. Without taking much of this time, I think this program issues in social work a cross-national discussion. This program is well conceived by our beloved professor, Dr. Selvin Stanley from Edge Hill University. Now, I request Dr. Selvin Stanley to take over the session and to conduct this program, and I will join in the last session. Thank you very much, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anand, for setting the tone for today's session. Good morning to colleagues and students from the UK. Good afternoon to social work colleagues and students from India, esteemed guests, dignitaries, representatives from non-governmental organizations, social work practitioners. Ellorkum vanakkam. Greetings to you from the UK. A hearty welcome to you for this event to commemorate World Social Work Day 2023. You know that this day is, it's actually celebrated on the 21st of March. It's usually the 3rd Tuesday of March every year, announced by the IFSW, the International Federation of Social Workers, which is the apex body in social work globally. Well, the IFSW says that the purpose of the day is to highlight achievements of social work, raise the visibility of the profession, and to kind of bring concepts like social justice and human rights into the forefront of social consciousness. Interestingly, the first World Social Work Day was celebrated in 2007, and the theme then was social work, making a world of difference. Like Anand said, this year's theme is respecting diversity through joint social action. So the theme talks about diversity in communities, social diversity in terms of our geography, our location, the differences, but uniting us through social action to kind of give an impetus to the idea of social justice, equality, and all those things that underpin the value base of our profession. So World Social Work Day 2023 is an opportunity for communities to engage in joint action. And the event today is a good start in that direction because we are coming together as a fraternity of social workers, people with common interests, people with common values, people working towards common goals. Like Anand said, today's event is organized in combination with between four institutions. And he also mentioned that in 2021, Edge Hill University did collaborate with Periyar Maniyamai Institute. Our then head of the department, Steve Hothersall, delivered the keynote address, and the theme for that year was social work in a global society. Well, I won't take much time because we are kind of running against the clock, and we would like to end by 12 noon today, UK time, which should be about 4:35 p.m. Indian Standard Time. The format for today's session, we have 5 speakers, each have been given 15 minutes only, but all of them being lecturers will have a temptation to kind of, they'll find it very difficult to fit ideas within 15 minutes. Towards the end, Anand will moderate a Q&A session where students from India, students from the UK can interact with one another, raise questions. Any of the resource persons or people who would like to answer are most welcome to unmute their mics. And that will be the last session. We have given that session longer time, I think about 30 to 40 minutes, so that we can have fruitful interaction rather than just listen to speakers and lecturers. So the format for the session, I wonder if Kieran Murphy is in the room. Kieran, can you say hello if you are in?
I don't think he's joined us just yet, Selwyn. He's teaching at the moment. So I'm happy to do my slot whilst we wait for Kieran, if that's okay, or whatever you decide to do.
That's absolutely fine. So what we will do is, the first topic we will take up is issues in social work education. We have two speakers on this, one from the UK, which is my esteemed colleague, Paul Rimmer, whose voice you just heard, and then he will be followed by Dr. Raja Samuel, who will also speak on the same issue, but hopefully will bring in a different perspective. What I will do is I will briefly introduce each speaker, and then I will hand it over to them for 15 minutes. When they have 30 minutes left, I will kind of interrupt a little bit, and that's an indication for you to taper off the talk. So my colleague Paul Rimmer is Associate Head of Social Work. You just saw him, you just heard him, and he's an approved mental health professional and a BIA, which means a best interest assessor. He also holds a full post qualifying award in childcare social work, which is the PQSW, and Paul maintains regular links with practice within an emergency social work setting. His current research interests relate to decision-making by approved mental health professionals. It's a very brief introduction. Paul has 3 children, 2 sheds, a Labrador called Jet, and only 1 wife. So with these words, I hand it over to Paul. Go on, Paul.
Thank you so much, Selwyn, and thank you so much for bringing this together. Good morning, everybody, or good morning to those of you in the UK, and good afternoon to our colleagues in India. As you can see behind me, I'm not actually stood outside the university, but that's a photograph of the front entrance of Edgehill University, which is in Ormskirk in Lancashire. Before I continue with my talk, I'm going to bring you all to Ormskirk in Lancashire for 2 minutes so you can get to see the beautiful Lancashire countryside and a short video of our campus. So I'm going to try to share my screen now. There's a photograph of me from probably about 15 years ago, just after I left school, I think, when I was much younger, and I'm going to hold on to that photograph for as long as I can. But anyway, I'm much grayer now, but anyway, let's go to Ormskirk in Lancashire. Let's find our video. I'm going to share that. I need to remember to share sound. It's a 2-minute video, and it's a short video of our campus. Enjoy. Okay. Oh, I'm now going to share with you my slides. Bear with me while I find that. There we are. Okay. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about issues in social work education. And I'm Paul Rimmer. I am the Associate Head of Social Work and Wellbeing. I am the lead social worker for Edge Hill University. I report to Social Work England, whose logo you can see there in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. Top right-hand corner, I thought I'd put a picture of a globe there because we're having a global experience today in relation to celebrating World Social Work Day. I'm based in the Faculty of Health, Social Care and Medicine, which sits within a wider professional faculty where we educate nurses, midwives, and in terms of our nurse education provision, we educate people in terms of mental health nursing, adult nursing, learning disability nursing, and child nursing. We also educate paramedic practice staff. So we hold quite a significant portfolio in terms of health and allied professions, sort of professions. Okay, moving on. So we've had a short tour of our beautiful campus. I've put the logos of our partners who are here today. So welcome to everybody. So in terms of social work education, in England, we have Social Work England, and they are our regulatory body. Professional social workers must register with Social Work England, and we must adhere to the professional standards for social workers. Social work students are not registrants. They are registrants in waiting. They don't register until the time at which they qualify. Registrants can apply to the register. So graduates from our programme can apply to the register following completion of a Social Work England approved programme. Our programmes at Edge Hill are all approved by Social Work England. So when we validate those programmes come under the scrutiny of Social Work England. Social Work England has been our regulator since 2019, and prior to that we had another regulator which was called the Health and Care Professions Council. The difference about Social Work England is that they have inspection powers, so they can visit the university and explore our curriculum. They inform our curriculum, their professional standards inform our curriculum. However, they have an obligation in terms of their powers of inspection to come in to look at what we do, put plainly, how we educate our students, how we work with our students. We have a forthcoming visit in October of this year. Social Work England will come, they will speak to staff, they will speak to students, they will speak to our partner agencies. So we need to meet that professional standard, not just in terms of social workers meeting that those professional standards. It's about us as a higher education institution meeting those professional standards. So that sets the context for the regulatory body requirements. I'm pleased to see we have in the region of 100 participants with us today. So that's really quite good going for an event like this. I'm just in terms of Social Work England professional standards, we have 50 Social Work England professional standards, and these are the key points. At the bottom of the screen, there is a link to the Social Work England professional standards, and within all of those standards, there are sub-standards, so to speak. And please, I'm not going to go through them endlessly today, being mindful of the time restrictions that we have, but they are the main key points here are the things that underpin social work education and what we do as social workers. So it's about promoting the rights, strengths and well-being of people, families and communities, establishing and maintaining the trust and confidence of people, being accountable for the quality of practice, of social work practice and the decisions that practitioners make, maintaining continuing professional development. So that's about social work education not simply coming to an end at the end of a program of social work education. That is about continuing professional development, acting safely, respectfully and with professional integrity, and that's about safeguarding the individuals, the vulnerable individuals with whom we work, and ultimately promoting ethical practice and reporting concerns as and when appropriate. And as I say, they are the key points, and within them there are 50 standards with the link at the bottom there for anybody who is interested. So in terms of the programs we deliver here at Edge Hill, there are 4 routes into professional social work at Edge Hill University. There is a BA Honours in social work, which is a standard 3-year undergraduate degree. I can see some of our students present on the call today who are on that programme. So that's 3 years of study, and within that programme and within all of these programmes, students would be expected to undertake 200 days of practice learning, and whether that's skills-based learning or direct face-to-face practice. So that's the undergraduate route. We run an MA in social work, so a Master of Arts in social work. That is a 2-year postgraduate route. Students are required to obtain an upper second class degree, so a 2-1 prior to entering onto that programme, and having associated experience and having undertaken a related degree subject. So something like sociology, psychology, allied health and social care, those kinds of subjects. We also have a programme called an Integrated Masters in Nursing and Social Work. That is a 4-year programme. So it's an undergraduate master's degree. Students start off at undergraduate level and complete their studies in year 4 with a master's level award, and it's a dual award. So students on that programme complete nursing studies, so they become one of the 4 fields of nursing. They elect to do that at the start of their studies, so that would be mental health nursing, learning disability nursing, or adult nursing, alongside their social work studies. And finally, we have a postgraduate diploma in social work, and which is called Step Up to Social Work. Again, that is a postgraduate programme. It is an employment-based route run in partnership with employers. Our colleague Nigel Kelleher, who is on the call today, runs that programme. So I'm sure Nigel will tell you more about that programme if you want to know about that. All of those programmes, information about those programmes is available on our university website. Okay, so moving forward. One of the things I thought about when talking about social work education and some of the key issues were not necessarily just how that impacts on staff or universities, but most importantly, students. And because students are at the heart of what we do here at Edge Hill. And one of the challenges for me, and we've got lots of students on the call, so I've kind of added at the end of this about ad infinitum, inter alia, whatever. I mean, there are lots and lots of issues beyond this, I'm sure, which students will have from their own experiences. But the way I see this is that students have the challenge of meeting the twofold challenge of obtaining a professional award and also undertaking an academic program. So they are not simply studying an academic discipline, they need to meet the professional requirements of a professional body. So it's not simply the university endorsing their studies, it is the professional body. And that's quite a challenge over the course of a program. We work very closely with our students. We have smaller cohorts at Edgehill in the region of about 30 students per cohort. We get to know our students. It's an intimate environment. There is lots and lots of interaction between us and our students. We get to know them. We get to know the challenges that they face, and we support them through those challenges. We work alongside them. Students face, the balancing the demands of personal and family life alongside their studies. And in recent times, there have been the implementation of tuition fees, and that is that students will actually accrue a debt they will pay for their studies over time. And as a result of that, many students need to work alongside their studies, and that can impact on their personal circumstances and their ability to complete their studies. For us as academic staff, it's really important for us to be aware of that, so we have an understanding of where students are and we can support students to get the balance right in terms of managing their studies and also managing their commitments outside of the university. It's also important for students to develop resilience because they will be undertaking work in a very emotionally demanding landscape, and we work very closely with our students and our practice partners to support them to develop resilience and to have an acute awareness of the demands of practice and the challenges faced by people with whom we work, so the vulnerable individuals with whom we work on a daily basis. Then students face the challenges of the actual practice role. So those things about understanding risk, understanding how to undertake assessments, making professional judgments with an evidence base, working with uncertainty, working with risk, and the challenges of becoming a professionally qualified social worker. Again, we've already talked about this, but to sort of drill that home, really, that concept of meeting Social Work England professional standards and being accountable individuals. Now, one of the things that I observe, and this is from my perspective, not necessarily just from a student perspective, I'm sure there will be far more issues than I've flagged up here, but one of the things that I see when I work with students is the challenges they face in terms of assessment deadlines, in terms of the things they experience when they're out in placement, in their practice learning experiences. I could probably spend another hour talking about this. I won't do that because I'm mindful I'm limited for time. There's some of the issues for students. Okay. In terms of social work education and social work practice itself, in the last sort of 20, 30 years or so, we've seen the implementation of neoliberalism and neoliberal policies in terms of the application of market principles to the delivery of social welfare services. And that is a real challenge. We now operate within market forces being applied not only to the delivery of the direct delivery of social welfare, but also some of the challenges out there in practice in terms of people undertaking agency work, the challenges faced by employers in terms of recruitment and retention of staff. But at the heart of all of this is maintaining an approach embedded in social justice and social action, which is why we're here today in terms of World Social Work Day 2023, that thing about respecting diversity and what we're all working towards in terms of joint social action. With that said, what I'd like people to reflect upon is, where does social work sit in the context of an advanced capitalist society, particularly with the challenges faced by local governments, particularly in the UK, who are in the main delivering social work services, but beyond into the private, independent, voluntary sector organisations. We also, as social work educationalists, we also need to work alongside the workforce requirements. We work very, very closely with our practice partners, so with employers. We also have to keep a very close eye on the landscape in terms of policy and legislation and what is happening out there. For example, in terms of the role of the approved mental health professional, which is a specialist mental health social work role, the role of the best interests assessor, and other roles in relation to what's happening in children's social work, what's happening in terms of deprivation of liberty and human rights. And we are always making sure that our course is fit for purpose. Again, we have a visit from Social Work England in October of this year. We have a newly validated programme that Social Work England are coming in to look at. And we have to make sure that we are current and up to date in terms of our delivery. So how do we make the link between theory and practice? At Edge Hill, we are committed to university-based social work education. We work, as I've already said, we work very closely with our partner organisations, mostly local authorities, and a significant number of private, independent and voluntary sector organisations to provide high quality placement experiences for our students. I know there is a slot on practice learning later on, so I'll leave that to our colleagues. As an education provider, we are subject to the stringent requirements of Social Work England and their education and training standards. I'm not going to go into lots of detail about that, but for those of you who are interested, the link to those standards are at the bottom of the page. So social workers need to meet the requirements of the Social Work England professional standards. As an education provider, we need to meet the standards of education and training expected of us by Social Work England, and that very much informs our curriculum. Okay, Social Work England.
Paul, I think you'll have to taper off, Paul.
Say again? I will do. I'll be very brief, Selwyn. Okay, social work education, some issues. We need to maintain currency of practice. Most people on the staff team have opportunity to maintain practice. Myself, I'm out there still in social work practice. There's issues to do with the marketisation of higher education and the commodification of education. We have a national student survey, significant in that it makes us accountable to our students. There are issues with employment-based routes and whether there are challenges for students meeting the theory and practice praxis. How do students become professionally ready for practice? We're in part of a teaching partnership. Now, the teaching partnership is a collaboration between Cheshire and Merseyside Social Work Teaching Partnership. That's all the higher education providers of social work education and all of the local authorities. I'm not going to go into lots of detail about that. The link is there to their website. Finally, in terms of, we work very closely with people with lived experience in terms of delivering teaching and learning. We host a service user and carer council. They partner with us. These are people who have direct experience of social work. And they come in, they talk to our students, they interview students to come onto our programs. I'm not going to read through the slide because I'm mindful that I'm pressed for time. There is a link at the bottom to our webpage for our service user and carer group, and we have a service user and carer council meeting only this afternoon. So they're very much involved in the governance of the programme too. Many thanks, and my apologies for running over, Selwyn.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Thank you very much for a comprehensive overview about social work education in the UK. I'm sure that there will be questions towards the end of the program today. I'm aware that Kieran Murphy has joined us, but Kieran, if you can hold your horses a little bit.
I'll hold my horses, Selwyn.
Yeah, because we are on this theme now. And so I would like to invite the next speaker who will talk about issues in social work education. It's my proud privilege to introduce Dr. Raja Samuel, the principal of Madras School of Social Work, which is my alma mater from where I graduated donkey's years back. Dr. Raja Samuel is a renowned academic with over 28 years of experience in teaching, research, and training in the field of social work and social development. His research interests, and he has done quite a bit of work in relation to female infanticide, childcare needs of women in the unorganized sector, debt bondage among powerless workers, assessment of post-tsunami psychosocial care, and determinants of effective networking among NGOs. Raja Samuel is involved in conducting needs assessment, impact evaluation of community projects for NGOs as well as the corporate sector. He is passionate about research and has conducted several workshops on quantitative and qualitative research. He was instrumental in introducing disability and empowerment as a specialization within in social work at the Madras School, and also a postgraduate program in social entrepreneurship. And like I said earlier, he is the principal of Madras School of Social Work. Sir, it's my honor to invite you for this session today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Selvin. It's a pleasure to be here while we have this session that looks at social work education across the globe, literally. Professor Anand, can you give me co-host permission so that I can share the screen?
Anand?
Okay, while...
Done, sir.
Just wait. I just, yeah, I think he has given.
So
So let
it's
me
done,
start with a brief introduction. In fact, our social work education canvas is quite different when compared to the UK. In fact, I thought I will start with what some of my students are doing. One of my students, by name Pandian, he is taking care of about 4 hospices. He is a manager of 4 hospices. And his role includes managing those facilities, looking after legal compliances, then a little bit of fundraising, and sometimes driving an ambulance and rescuing people on the streets who are destitute and who have been abandoned on the streets. So that's one level of work of one of my students is doing. And of course, there are at the other end, not my student, but someone who graduated from my college is sitting in as a director as one of the directors in UN AIDS program in the UN. Now that's a range and scope of social work services, social work professionals that are being developed by Madras School of Social Work. In fact, that brings in both an opportunity and a problem in terms of the diversity of the roles that social workers play, and how can social work education cater to the diversity of requirement in a very, very diverse country like ours. Let me start my PowerPoint. Okay. So probably I will first take you through kind of numbers, what we are grappling with in terms of social work education in our country. We have about 650 plus institutions in India. There's no exact estimate, more recent estimate. And 80% of those institutions are in 8 states. And out of that, 120 plus are in the state I am in, we are in terms of our college is situated in Tamil Nadu itself. And we also have 20 plus universities offering, and every year about 20,000 postgraduate social work students graduate every year. So that's the numbers we're talking about. And of course, another new dimension that has come up recently is that out of almost 1/3 of those who graduate in social work are graduating in the distance mode. And altogether, there is a rough estimate that about 5 lakh social workers are currently working in India. So that's that's a spread and of social work education as well as social work practice in the country. But going on to the kind of programs that are being offered, we offer programs from the Bachelor's of Social Work level to Master's, then Master of Philosophy, which is about 1 to 1.5 years, and a PhD and the postdoctoral level. These are the levels of education in social work that's been offered. And there are both generic as well as specialization models in education. Predominantly, it is specialization in most places, and some colleges, some universities are offering generic programs. The content would include the primary methods and the fields of social work, the various fields of social work, and certain interdisciplinary content in terms of sociology, psychology, and whatever is related to social work. And then, of course, a very core component of the field work. Now, all this has been running and being offered in the country without a council at the national level. We don't have a council for social work at the national level to regulate either the education or the profession. But it's amazing to see how social work education as well as social work practice is going on in the country in a very self-governed fashion. That's amazing to notice. That's one of the strengths of social work practice in India. Without an apex body, a fairly good amount of quality is maintained in terms of both education and practice. Now, of course, one of the guidelines that has been very useful is the UGC curriculum, which had 2 review committees, and they came up with the model curriculum. And I think most of the institutions are following that UGC. UGC is basically University Grants Committee, which is an apex body for governing higher education in the country, general higher education, not only related to social work, but general higher education in the country. Now, those review committees gave certain directions for what can go into as a content for social work education, and generally universities have been following that and have been modifying their curriculum around that model curriculum. And of course, apart from that, each state has a state council for higher education. In Tamil Nadu, we have a Tamil Nadu State Council for Higher Education, which has given now curriculum outline for social work with from the point of view of outcome-based education. Of course, after education, the social workers in the country serve in government, non-profit sector, the corporate sector, and the civil society sector also, and also they involve in policy advocacy along with human rights persons. So this is the backdrop and the canvas in which social work education is currently being run in the country. And going on to the issues, as I started with the diversity in terms of the social work practices in the country, to cater to that kind of a diversity in terms of the practice and in terms of the expectations in which social workers are expected to work in the country, without a very, very clear compartmentalized framework, what social workers can do. Bereft of that, what we had to do was come up with a lot of subjects to be included in the curriculum. So if you find a social work, Master of Social Work curriculum in India is quite loaded with a variety of subjects, apart from the primary methods and working with individuals, which is a primary focus for social work. But we have a plethora of subjects being added because of the nature of the jobs that social workers do within the country. So that's something that we look at as both a strength as well as a challenge for us to. We often sometimes grapple with the question of, okay, whether we include the subject, we don't want to throw out the subject from the curriculum, but we don't have space for this new paper. We can't do away with that old paper, but that's very important, that's foundational. So all these kind of conversations go on in our boards of studies when we look at, because of our need to include as much as diversity as possible in terms of the curriculum. So that's something. Of course, non-standardization of quality. As I said earlier, that we don't have a council, and we have a variety of specializations. In fact, there are about 16 to 20 specializations within social work that's been offered by various colleges within the country. So, but there is no standardized standards given for that kind of education, whether it's a PSW course or an MSW course, but it's surprisingly well organized at the institutional level, at the university level, at the state level. Whenever they come together, they ensure that there is some kind of quality standards that is maintained, though I wouldn't call it standard uniformly throughout the country. Each state may have some different flavor of specializations, different combination of specializations, and so on. Now, the other question that always keeps plaguing us, which crops up in all our discussions, is how indigenous is our curriculum and whether, to what extent should it be indigenous? But I would rather look at it more from the point of whether the curriculum is neither westernized or whether it's Eurocentric or whether it's indigenous, but whether it meets the job market needs. That would be the primary question that we are dealing with. And that is the one thing that motivates us to change the flavor of a course to suit the job market, while retaining the fundamental premises of social work in terms of the methods, in terms of the principles and the values, but fine-tuning it to the emerging market needs in the country. So that's an issue that we continuously come up with. And of course, another issue is, of course, the field work being a very important component within the social work training. We find that now very often the changing nature of non-governmental organizations, where predominantly our students go for fieldwork, the changing nature of those organizations do pose sometimes challenge for us. Again, there is no governing criteria for what social work is. So organizations do a lot of things, but they are very gracious enough to provide fieldwork opportunities for social work students. There's always a fine balance of what the curriculum expects and what the organization expects. So that's often the focus of our fieldwork conferences, where we continuously explore, okay, this is what you need to learn as part of the curriculum, but this is what the organization is expecting to do, that the kind of work that they do in their fields. Now, how do we find a match? Where do we fit in? How do we match our expectation and their expectations? That's another constant work that we keep doing in terms of fieldwork. And another issue that we contend with is, of course, the rapid growth of social work institutions in the country. As I said, now it's about 650 plus. Now, that it's a great thing to happen, in my opinion, because India is marching forward to increase the ratio of higher education, its enrollment in higher education. Right now, it stands somewhere between 35. We want to increase it up to 50% in the next decade or so. So in that context, starting off social work institutions is great. But the rapid growth also comes with a lot of problems in terms of the flavor of core social work getting lost in the multiplication of social work institutions. Very often, sometimes some of these new institutions really find it a challenge to understand what social work is. There's always conversations going on within those institutions of how much field work should be permitted. Why do students spend a lot of time in the field? These questions are asked by the manager of those institutions. So some of these are because of the rapid growth without certain guidelines or certain standards that guide them. So that's something that we have been contending with. In fact, some of the new, I know one university which started social work, but under the psychology department first. Then after he retired, the department moved to the adult education head of the department. Then after 1 year or so, it moved to the sociology department. And right now it is run under the commerce department. Now, all the four heads of departments I know personally, they are very sincere people, very committed. They are taking on this as an additional load in the university. But the problem is they may definitely not have the perspective how a social work education should be run. So we can imagine when we want to rapidly grow the number of social work institutions, we have attendant problems like this. Now, apart from that, of course, there's a general issue of teacher quality in terms of social work. One of the main issues related to social work education is that how much are teachers connected to practice? That would be a major issue for us. That has been continuing to be a major issue for us, where our curriculum is, I think one of the reasons is also because the curriculum is hugely overloaded with a lot of teaching hours, and faculty are left with very little time to indulge in practice, involve with themselves in practice. And of course, there are quite a lot of faculty members who have involved in practice from various institutions, even in our institution as well as premier institutions all over the country. There are faculty involved in practice, and they have also brought out excellent models. For instance, Childline is one of the models that has come out of social work faculty practice. Like that, but we need to improve on that score. And of course, one of the issues is, of course, distance education. Distance education has come to stay in social work. Earlier, initially, when distance education in social work was brought in, there was a lot of opposition. But I think the world over, distance education has been accepted even within social work. One of the concerns is how do they negotiate field work? How do they negotiate the quality of field work and all the other components, particularly practice-related components? So that's something that we have been constantly discussing. And I'm sure there are very good distance education universities in the country that have done great work in providing the opportunity for those who can't go to regular institutions. Indira Gandhi National Open University, or in Tamil Nadu, we have Tamil Nadu Open University. All these have done a lot of good work in structuring the curriculum in a fairly great way. And finally, of course, in terms of student quality, our curriculum does focus a lot on issues and problems in society. And so we expect our students to come in with a lot of compassion and commitment and competency. But if you ask me in terms of the millennials who come in now, there's a lot of views coming from the field itself that the students who come in sometimes have challenges in devoting a greater commitment to the job of doing social work. Sometimes in the field work they do, but most of our students are doing fantastic this. And I think our curriculum is, while grappling with all these things, I would say that fairly we have been quite successful in producing excellent students who serve in a wide range of options within the country. You know, there are jobs that pay very little. I mean, some of the social workers in the country earn less than even an unskilled worker sometimes. But it's a commitment that they have that carries them through with such little salary, and they work sometimes in very remote areas. Again, one of the issues, of course, most of the social work institutions are situated in the urban areas. And I think in future, we need to ensure that a lot of social work institutions are started even in rural areas, where the rural students can also get an opportunity to study in those institutions. And I think I'll stop here with my intervention in terms of the social work issues. Thank you for this patient listening.
Thank you, Dr. Samuel, for touching upon so many issues relevant to social work in India today. I can see that the field is expanding largely, but the issues remain the same compared to when I was there as a teacher as well. Thanks very much. I'm sure that we will draw on your expertise more during the interaction session towards the end. Before we move on to the next theme, now that Dr. Kieran Murphy is with us, I would like to invite him as the next speaker to share some thoughts about child and family social work, which is a major stream of social work practice here in the UK. A few words to introduce Dr. Kieran Murphy. He is currently the interim head of social work and well-being at Edge Hill University, and he's a senior lecturer in social work. He's a qualified and registered social worker with specialization in childcare and protection. He's also a board member and trustee of the Association of Child Protection Professionals, and he has several publications to his credit in journals of repute. He's an active researcher. He's currently been sanctioned a British Academy Liverhume project along with myself, to work on understanding work and family correlates in social workers in the northwest of the UK. So with these few words, can I invite you, Kieran, for your thoughts on child and family social work?
Yes, thanks, Selwyn. What a lovely introduction, Selwyn. I'm going to invite you to do all my future introductions. I really enjoyed that. So thank you, Selwyn. Hello, everybody. Delighted to be here today. I had initially planned to talk about global social issues impacting on social work. But in true social work fashion, yesterday when I planned to get that material prepared, I ended up picking lots of other tasks that I hadn't planned for the day. So I said to Selwyn, let me talk about something that I don't necessarily have to plan for, something that I'm very comfortable talking about. And that is children and family social work and some of the challenges that we continue to encounter in children and family social work. What I will do is I'll talk about it in a sense where I feel it will resonate both with our colleagues in India and in England, some of the issues that we continue to experience in children and family social work. Any type of social work, when we at EdChill, and I'm sure it's the same with our colleagues in India, when we interview candidates for our social work programs, every single one without fail says they want to be a social worker because they want to make a difference. Okay. And I'm sure that's the case for everybody here. Okay. I mean, I must say that I was a reluctant social worker. I didn't think I wanted to be a social worker. My parents were social workers, but then I found that having worked on the periphery of social care, social work was a calling for me. It was a good transition, and I thoroughly enjoyed being a social worker subsequently. What we find, though, in children and family social work around the world, certainly in England, are constant barriers to what we would consider service user centred, person centred, in the context of children and family social work, child-centred practice. And it's something I continue to talk about. What are those barriers? What are the hindrances? Some of that is about the bureaucratic burden that we now encounter in practice, where in my current, Selwyn mentioned our funding from BA Leverhulme project with one of our projects that's forthcoming. Another one of my projects at the moment, funded by IHR, is looking at current child protection social workers' preparedness for child protection practice. Why there's such an instability in the workforce in England's child protection team, and where current social workers feel they could have been better prepared in terms of their social work education. And it's really interesting the things that are coming out, because those are in our interim analysis, because those are some of the hindrances that I think will affect people all across the world. The bureaucratic burden. Social workers repeatedly estimating they spend 80% of their time on the computer and saying, how can I be child-centred? How can I be person-centred when 80% of my time is not with the client, not with the service user? How can I make decisions in the best interest of that service user if I haven't got time to spend with them, to build a relationship with them, to get to know what they need? Okay. And if I can't do that, then the decisions I make about them are going to have to be based on what general research, theory, policy, process says that I have to do. Okay. And the problem with taking that approach is it isn't person-centered, service user-centered, child-centered. It doesn't account for individual need. It doesn't account for children or families or service users whose unique or unusual situations fall outside usual predefined cohorts. And in England in particular, the reason why, despite I would say one of the most effective child protection systems in the world, it is statistically one of the best. But the reason why we continue to high profile child abuse tragedies is with a huge amount of demand, depleted resources, and an inability to spend requisite time with children and families who need our help. We are following procedures in the drive for transparency, which is right, but those children whose unusual needs do not fit into normal, usual, quotes unquote, cohorts are slipping through that proverbial net of protection. Okay, it's very frustrating. And, in many respects, and whatever type of social work we're doing, but certain children and family social work, and certainly social work in the UK, the fundamentals of social work has to be face-to-face time with the service user. For all those reasons that we're talking about, okay? Getting to know them, getting to know what they need, okay? The best social work is social work that is flexible and innovative. Okay, but we can't be flexible and innovative if we don't know what that service user, what that child, what that family, what that parent in front of us needs. Okay, we need to spend time with them. So 80% of our time at our desk, 20, and actually I'll say that most of the respondents, child protection social workers responding to my current survey, are estimating less than 10% of their current time is face-to-face with children. That's the wrong way around. And the question that we have, and it was presented very well in the Munro Review of Child Protection, which is 10 years old now, is how do we change that? How are we spending 80% of our time with the service user, with the child, with the family, and 20% of our time writing about it? Okay, so social workers in England, this is a mantra that exists in many offices. If it's not on the system, it hasn't been done. Is something that I've talked about in my papers, is put out there to put pressure on service users to make sure there is a written account of the work they've done. It usually manifests from an anxiety about inspection. I've coined the phrase Ofsted anxiety disorder in one of my papers, which came from a social worker in my ethnography, which I just thought was fantastic. Very pertinent at the moment in England, because we are looking at Ofsted, certainly in education sense, as an inspection provider and their suitability, and the duress that they put on professionals after the tragic case of a head teacher who took her own life after a negative inspection, and how that pressure is leading to the bureaucratic burden. Mantras like, if it's not on the system, it hasn't been done, means that social workers in my research will say to me, listen, Kieran, I know you want to hear that I am child-centered. I know you want to hear that I have the child's best interests at heart, but really I'm spending my day thinking, have I got all my paperwork up to date? Because what will happen if the inspectors come in tomorrow? Okay, so all of these are barriers to child-centered practice. They're barriers to person-centered practice. They're barriers to service users centered practice. Okay, and actually these themes exist all around the world. Okay, that actually the fundamentals of social work has to be that thing that all of the applicants for our courses say, I want to make a difference, I want to help people. The best social work is that social work which allows us to spend the maximum amount of time with our service user, our client, the child, the family, getting to know them, building relationship, understanding what they need, and then using our resources to help them meet that need. And then that brings me to my second point in terms of barriers. A good social work system, a good children's services system has to be properly funded. It has to be properly funded. It's very frustrating for me that certainly in England, there's a narrative around child protection in particular, but children and family social work, that when a high profile child abuse case reaches the public domain and there's this notion of moral panic, social workers become the fall guy. Okay, it's been that way for a long period of time. There's often little conversation about how chronically underfunded social services are at the moment. In England, I've written in various forums about the impact of austerity as a national policy since 2010, that most children's services departments have lost 50% of their funding since that time. One children's services department in Greater Manchester, where I conducted an ethnography, and just because I had access to this data, I can tell you, had to lose 82%, excluding what is ring fence for schools, because that's protected by law, of their children's services budget. Okay, so 4/5 over a 10-year period. And that has an impact on families. It has an impact on, those families who are receiving small amounts of support and staying outside of serious firefighting child protection systems are pushed into crisis and enter the system. Okay, we see that. We see that in England at the moment. We see in other parts around the world where this kind of right-wing austere governmental policies have been put into action. And it means there's more and more demand on the system. Okay, we have more referrals because more families are in crisis. We have more child protection plans. We have more children in need or equivalent. We have more children coming into the care of local authorities, local government. And the irony is there isn't more money for more social workers. So caseloads go up and social workers subsequently have less time to spend with the children that are in front of them. Okay, and they spend less time with the children in front of them. They're more likely to miss stuff. Our colleagues in India, certainly colleagues in England, will have heard of the name Arthur Labinjo Hughes. I was asked to give an interview for BBC Radio a few weeks ago in the area where Arthur sadly died. And the interviewer started by giving me a quote from Arthur's grandfather, which said that when the social workers came round to the house to visit Arthur and his abusers, not knowing that they were his abusers and subsequently his killers, unfortunately, they had a look around the house and they thought that everything was okay. And Arthur's grandfather said if they'd looked at it, if they'd lifted up his shirt, they would have seen the bruising and they would have known that it wasn't okay. And when he asked me this question, I said, well, you know, it's very difficult and it's a very tragic case. But what that makes me think about is how little time social workers really do have with children because of the level of demand that we are seeing for our services at the moment. And it means that things will tragically get missed. Okay, so again, it brings me back to this point. How do we free up social workers to spend the maximum amount of time with their service users, be it the child, be it the family, whatever form of client? Interestingly, the review of children's social care that's taken place in this country recently recommended, I think, £2.6 billion investment from the UK government over the next 2 years. It was substantially less than the money that's been saved from children's services departments over the last 10 years. But the author said that we need 2.6 billion to get the children's social care system in England back to a quotes unquote safe operational level. The government's response has been to commit £200 million of that. Okay, so less than 8%. I should say that 82% of cuts to one Greater Manchester Authority over 10 years constituted 100 million. Okay, so that's half of what the government are committing to improve the whole children's social care system in England at the moment. And, you know, it leaves me feeling rather despondent about the case of things. And it makes me feel that if we cannot properly invest in the services to support children, we are not investing properly in those children, and more children like Arthur, Star Hobson, Hakeem Hussein, Peter Connolly, Victoria Columbia are going to slip through the proverbial net of protection. Okay, and it's frustrating. What we can do as practitioners is think about how we push back on these things, how we, knowing the importance of building a relationship with the service user, with the child, with the family, how do we maximize our time with them? How do we push back on mantras like, if it's not on the system, it hasn't been done? How do we push back on Ofsted anxiety disorder? And how do we ensure that we remain child focused so that we can be innovative and flexible because we've built a relationship with the child, we know what they want and need, and we can respond accordingly. And that child on our watch won't slip through the proverbial net of protection. And I think that's messages for all of us all around the world, not just here in England. And so, and I've totally lost track of how long I've been talking for there, but I'm guessing I'm coming up to my time.
Yes, Kieran, it'll be nice if you can taper off.
I'm tapering. This is my taper. That's tapered. Thank you for inviting me to speak, and I hope I haven't bored everybody stupid with my soapbox and passion.
Thank you very much, Kieran.
Thank you, Sally.
For an overview on children and family social work. For your information, child and family welfare is a very popular specialization within the social work course in India. And
Good.
I'm sure that many people in the audience kind of belong to this particular stream of social work.
Excellent.
And I'm sure that they would raise issues and questions, queries for you towards the end of the program.
No problem at all. I'd be happy to. Well done to those people, by the way. I'll give them a shout out right now. Okay, thank you, Selby.
Thanks, Kieran. And we now move on to the second major theme of the day, which is around practice issues in social work practice. And we have two speakers. I will first introduce Nigel Kelleher, my colleague from the UK from Edgell University, followed by Beulah Emanuel. I will introduce her separately. Just a few words about Nigel, who's a senior colleague, and he qualified as a social worker in 2001. He has worked in Ireland and England with children and young people in care, particularly those involved in criminal offending and those who need advocacy as intervention. He has worked in social work education since 2007, and he says he has an unhealthy interest in policy and children's social care reform in England. He's also a qualified teacher and has worked with young people who have left or been excluded from school before attaining formal qualifications in Ireland, and as part of an international project in Botswana. By background, ethnicity, Nigel is Irish, and according to him, these are not my words, he says he has a tendency to digress and speak too fast, but is very happy to be interrupted, challenged on anything he might say, and or be asked to slow down a little bit. I'm sure, Nigel, you will be fine. With these few words, can I hand over the session to you?
Thank you very much, Simon. I enjoyed that. And thanks to all the contributors so far. And I am personally very excited that we're all joined into this call this morning. So hello to everyone all over the world. Little special shout out to people joining us from Malawi, because I've had the good fortune to be able to visit your country at a couple of times, and that was very enjoyable. All the other countries I haven't got to yet, but you know, there's still time. Let me try and share what I want to work with today. Okay, can someone let me share? Is there a reason I can't share? Okay, I think it's coming up now. Lovely. Share. So hopefully everyone can see that. Can someone just confirm you can see that?
Yeah, you're fine, Michael.
Thank you, Selwyn. Okay. 15 minutes for a very wide-ranging topic, issues in social work practice. And I wanted to take a view from England because that's where I'm familiar with. But the theme that I want to pick up really, I think, is international or global, whatever word you'd prefer. So there are no shortage of practice issues for social workers and a huge amount of social issues, ways social workers try and help protect and support people around the world. We all have, each country, we have our own kind of focuses, I suppose, but all of these will be familiar to social workers around the world, I think. Within the profession itself, I think there are issues around what we're about, our professional identity, what we're used for in the different countries that we practice in, how well we're understood by the public and how well we're supported by the public, and the level of resources available to help us do our jobs. In terms of organisational issues, I think in England, there's big pressure on recruitment of social workers now. Employers are finding it harder to employ social workers. Those social workers are staying in the profession for shorter periods of time, so there's problems around retention. A lot of that relates to what Kieran spoke about earlier, social workers, workload and burnout. So all these things are prominent issues for practice. But the one I want to talk about, today really, which I think has a global reach, is the idea of making professional judgments as a social worker in relational practice. So how do we make our judgments and how do we make credible judgments when we're working with people? Another way of putting that is, do we pay enough attention to how we make our judgments, and in particular, how we make credible judgments in social work practice? And as a little teaser, a follow-up question, would allowing artificial intelligence make those judgments for us do it better than social workers? There'll be an answer to that before the end of the session, so hang in for that. Okay, so the view from England. Professional judgment and decision-making in social work has been gaining more attention more recently. So it's been on the agenda for 15 years, 20 years, but since about 2017, 2018, we've had a massive increase in this area, thinking about how the social worker actually goes about making judgments and decisions. And in the English framework, it matters that professional social work is regulated. So you can't call yourself a social worker unless you're registered with Social Work England, mentioned by one of the speakers earlier. Most of those regulated social workers in England work in local authority, local government posts. And there are some key frameworks that set out expectations for those social workers in local authority posts. There are other frameworks that set out expectations for social workers, whether they work in local authority or private or volunteer independent sector employers. But what they all have in common is an increased emphasis in how social workers make credible judgments. And as I say, that's become, that's gained more attention since about 2018 over here. But regardless where we are in the world, a social worker needs to make judgments. And what I'm interested in is how we go about doing that. So, I would imagine all these things are familiar to people. Social workers are expected and should, because it's a very good idea, make use of the expertise and the knowledge and the views of the person we're trying to support, or the family we're trying to support, or the community that they come from. And that picks up on a theme earlier about the place of Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous expertise in social work judgment and decision making. Alongside that is the idea of applying social work values and the knowledge and understanding we gain through experience. And I think that picks up on a point that Kieran made about social workers wanting to be able to spend more time in families with people who need help and support and protection. But sometimes that, well, very often in this country, the bureaucracy gets in the way of that. Social workers should also be making use of theory and research to inform their judgments and decisions, and they need to work within national law, national policy, and agency and national guidance where they apply. So all those things are relevant to making judgments and decisions. But what I'm increasingly interested in is the fact that the social worker isn't working on their own. Typically, they're working within an environment, within a team, within an organization. And that has huge impact on how that social worker goes about making their judgments and decisions. So just to try and explain this graphic, the triangle is the team or the organization that our lovely social worker is working within. And in that organization, there are timescales set. Now, in England, some of those timescales are set nationally through law and regulations, but there are also timescales set by the agency themselves. The social worker will have some information on which to make their judgment, but there'll always be other bits of information they'd like to have, but they don't have. They still need to make their judgments within timescales. The lives of the people we're trying to support are very often complex, so it's not an easy thing to make these judgments. Social workers typically have a manager, and that manager has their preferences about how they like things done. That social worker is situated within a team, and that team have patterns about how they like to do things. And of course, everyone in that organization is subject to the law, policy, procedures, and guidance that they're expected to follow. So I'm interested in thinking about the impact of the environment that the social worker works in on how social workers make judgments and decisions. So that's the bit I'm interested in. What is going on in the social worker's head, in the social worker's mind, when they've got judgment decisions to make in relation to people who are trying to protect, support, and assist while we work in the environments that we work in. So, does it matter? Hopefully, the things we'll put on this slide will start to challenge some of the assumptions we hold around this. So first of all, people in universities, whether they're in England or in India or in anywhere else around the world, work really hard, I think, at trying to make sure our students who become our graduates, who become our social workers, are able to think critically and analytically. And I think, I take that as given. So all the social workers in England have been in universities that have been confident when they've graduated that social worker can think critically and analytically and knows what it is to be a social worker and will go off and put those social work values into practice. And then we look at what happens in the real world in England, and then it raises some uncomfortable questions for us. And the first one I'd like to highlight is something that's come out of recent research in England that gets described as the inverse intervention law. Now, it's a complicated title for something that is a much simpler idea. But I mentioned most of the social workers in England, all social workers in England, to call themselves social workers, are registered with Social Work England, and most of those work in local authorities. In local authorities, you have our child protection and family support services. What we're seeing across England is that how a social worker, how a local authority and the social workers within the local authority respond to a family, particularly poorer families, depends not on the family's issues, but on the level of wealth in the area that local authority governs. So to try and explain what this graphic is showing, the orange line is the level of deprivation across these different local authorities in England, these different local authorities. So what we can see as we move from left to right, the level of deprivation in these areas is going up. More families facing harder circumstances. But what is going down is the level of intervention by that local authority in that family, particularly child protection level, where the state really intervenes quite heavily into the family and curtails rights they have under the Human Rights Act in England and some other important issues. And what the pattern is that if you're a family who is poor, economically poor, in a local authority that has lots of deprivation, the local authority is likely to intervene less heavily in your family than if you were a family with the same level of income, same level of economic power in a richer local authority. That isn't about the issues that present to the social worker when they come around to see how things are going. So it's not about the family income, it's not about the issues created by the lack of income, it's about judgment and decision making in the local authority. And they don't, it's hard to see a coherent, defensible logic in it. So that's one issue that we are worrying about. Now, these social workers who are holding these cases, the social work team managers who are overseeing their practice, etc., as we go up the hierarchy in the organization, they're all qualified social workers. They're committed to social work values. They're not trying to be oppressive of people who are poor. But in practice, some very strange things happen that become oppressive of people who are poor. A second example of the relevance of this theme, this one is a slide taken from something called the Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel, who are set up in England to help social workers and social work organisations improve practice, right, around children and families. And in annual reports 2019, 2020, 2021, they have identified that there remains an ongoing weakness in social workers' ability to critically analyse. So that you can see the most recent report here, it's that one, it's point 1 highlighted in yellow. Not only that, they are increasingly concerned about social workers' ability to take due cognizance of racial, ethnic and cultural identities and lived experience of children and families. So we are being asked hard questions here. Social work practice in England has been asked hard questions. In universities, we know we are producing graduates who can think analytically and can think critically, who understand the values of social work and are committed to implementing the values of social work. And if we fast forward just a couple of years into practice, these same social workers produce this. Now, I don't think it's because the universities have got it wrong. And I don't think it's because the individual social workers have got it wrong. I think it's something about the environments we work in and the impact they have on how we make judgments and decisions as an individual social worker. And if that's true, we're left with the question, well, is that a local issue or is that a global issue? And I think there's good reasons to think it might be a global issue, and as a result have implications for us all. So what happens? Why does this happen? And this is why I think it might be global rather than, or it certainly has a global dimension and not just a local dimension. What about these human tendencies? What about the idea of satisficing? Now, we don't talk about satisficing too much in social work. In England, we're starting to talk about it a bit more. It's much more common idea in organizational studies. And remember, my interest here is how the organization, the workplace, affects judgment and decision making. But satisficing is a human tendency that has been shown across the world to make the judgment that looks good enough for now when we are busy. And social workers across the world are busy, right? So we use a mental shortcut, we use a mental trick to make a judgment that looks good enough for now. The second point is ecological rationality. Another phrase used for this very often is the wisdom of the crowd, using the wisdom of the crowd, using the wisdom of your colleagues as you talk through cases, that kind of stuff. But I think there's a dark side to ecological rationality, and I think it's around the influence it has on professional judgment and decision making is, I'll make the judgment that's good enough for my team manager or good enough for my colleagues. That's my template rather than the person I'm trying to support. A third very human tendency is around loss aversion. Again, international research pointing to the fact that humans are willing to take risks. So, for example, risks around tolerating some risk as a family or a person tries to change something in their life. But what we are much less comfortable with is tolerating a risk where we feel that we have something personally to lose. And what might a social worker lose? They might lose control over their diary. They might lose reputation with their colleagues and with their manager. They might end up working in a case where someone that they're trying to protect and support gets harmed. So these become really important subconscious drivers on the judgments that we make.
Nigel, time?
Is that the 15 minutes, Ellen?
Yeah, Nigel, goes fast.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And the last one is that we may be over-reliant on intuition. Because we're so busy, we rely on our subconscious more than we should do. All these things are human. All these things aren't England context specific or any other country context specific. There's something about how humans are. And if we are like that as humans, those humans who go to work as social workers, we bring those things with us. And I think that is very important in thinking about the credibility of our decision making. So there is some advice in all those frameworks about what we should do to avoid these things. The key one I'd mention is challenge our own and each other's thinking. We don't tend to do that when we're very busy. Make sure we consider more than one possible explanation of the information that we've got in front of us. What I'm wondering about is, does that take us closer to an international vision of social work expressed in the idea behind today, or further away from it? I'm not too sure. I'm still thinking about that. I promised you I'd have an answer to this question. Does artificial intelligence make more reliable decisions for social workers? That has been tested in England in 2020. The good news is we did not find any evidence that models that were created using machine learning techniques, artificial intelligence, work any better than children's social workers in making judgments and decisions about risk. However, one of the key themes in this report is that's about the algorithm just needs to be improved, rather than there's something inherently impossible about allowing a machine to do this. I think that's a big challenge to social work practice across the country, especially a social work practice that puts the person in a role of equal partner, that values Indigenous knowledge, etc., etc. That's it, folks. I hope you found some challenge in there. I hope you have food for thought from that there. Thanks very much for inviting me to speak. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, Selwyn.
Thanks, Nigel. Thank you very much for talking on such an important topic in practice in terms of the basis on which social workers make professional judgments, discretion, intuition, the works. You packed so much within such a short time. Thank you ever so much. And I'm sure that there will be some interaction towards the end on some of the points that you have made. With that, let's turn to our next speaker, who will also be talking about issues in practice. And I'm very happy, extremely pleased to introduce Dr. Beulah Emanuel. Let me start by saying that she's a former student of mine, and it's so nice to see her progress and advance to this level, particularly in the field of correctional social work, which is a field in India where not many social workers enter or thrive. So Beulah is currently working for the Academy of Prisons and Correctional Administration as a professor of social work and sociology for the past 2 decades. Looking at her, you would not guess that she's been a professional for 2 decades. She's a consultant for many governmental organizations like BPRD, the MHA. She runs a lot of training programs for prisons, probation, and welfare workers. She runs a lot of short-term and in-service courses. She produces training manuals. She's working on a project on released women prisoners, and she's the project director for that particular project. She is recognized by Christian Medical College to be on their ethics committee. She's training the police, the prison force, and the judiciary on topics related to the psychology of young offenders. And her biodata goes on. And I would conclude by saying that she is also an international trainer for the Mid-Pacific Center USA, which trains global leaders in this particular field. So I'm very happy, Beulah, that you are with us today. And with these few words of introduction, I hand over the session to you.
Thank you very much, sir. I feel very much honored and privileged to be introduced by you, sir. A very good morning to you all, and a good evening to my own fellow men. Thank you for the opportunity. Allow me to share my screen. As sir rightly introduced me, I come from this background, and I still remember the day I had a tug with my professor to change my field. We had a lot of arguments regarding this, and finally, sir is responsible for all my developments, and I owe a lot to him. And before going into the presentation, I'd like to show a few pictures of mine in which I'm doing some work. I think I'm not. Sure. I'm so sorry. These are the people I'm training. They come as raw graduates, and they get trained as prison officers. The youngsters, the old ones. And this is with the President of India. We have part of our curriculum. We visit the President of India.
Sorry to
Your slides are not moving. Your slides are not moving.
Oh.
Yeah, better.
Yes. So this is the President of India and the Governor of Kerala. And this is what I do. I always stay with a khaki uniform. And these are my trainee officers who are now DIGs and IG prisons in the whole of India. And as an academy, we train social workers, psychologists, Deputy Superintendent of Prisons, IG prisons, jailers, welfare officers, counselors, probation officers, magistrates, judges in special programs, police officers too. And talking about the topic, the future of social work is now, as we have come to understand that our work in the present is the foundation of our work in the future. I believe in this. While talking about the future, it's very, very important to talk about what is happening in the present, which will set SOP for the future. So I have focused it as my professor has guided me. I have set it into 3 important topics: the profession, best practices, which I found in some of the countries, the status of social work practice in India, the ground realities, and the need. So why I want to take you around the world is because we recognize the importance of incorporating a global lens in the social work practice, and also focusing on domestic community level factors may be inadequate so to fully understand the complex interplay of issues. So with this ideas, I have taken a tour of various global standards and practices that help social workers in the field. So when I just browsed into the US site, I found out that there is a website for social workers. There is a statistics available for social work. They even have predicted that 13% increase by 2029 in the social work employment. And I found that social workers are involved in national, state, and local elected officers. And there is the increased scope of social work practice in a variety of fields. And also many other information about how many female social workers are there, male social workers are there. It was quite interesting when I was going through this. And they in fact have separate information on what percentage works in hospitals, outpatient care units, and a very wonderful system they have. And there are also social work groups for educators, and they have groups separately catering setting wise. And when I just had gone through Norway, I found that the history dates back to 60 years. And there is a National League of Norwegian Women who teach courses in social work in Oslo. It is their initiative, and they have state-run Norwegian schools of social work. And Australia, of course, as everyone knows, that they have a professional body, and they have statistics about social workers, and they have different fields in which they give importance to social workers, and they have certification and membership for which we have to apply if we have to practice in Australia. And Japan has 4 major organizations, associations: Japanese Association of Certified Social Workers, Japanese Association of Social Workers, Japanese Association of Social Workers in Health Services, and Mental Health Social Workers. So they have segregated their profession into micro level, meso level, and macro level. Very professionally, they have stratified the level of social work. And in China, there is a national body of the profession in China, and they go by the social work degree, and their number of years is 4 years. And China has around 3 lakh social workers, 0.3 million. This is from the government reports. They have given this report. I was really surprised to see this, that government is getting the statistics and publishing it. And in China, social work refers to social welfare, social assistance, poverty elimination, marriage, family affairs, mental health, disabled persons rehabilitation, employment assistance, and prevention of crime. So every field they have annexed in the social work perspective. And they also, by 2015 and 2020, the number of Chinese social, they call them social specialists, is projected to top 5 lakh and 1.4 million respectively. And according to a government plan, which calls for greater efforts to train more social work specialists. And they too have they don't need a certification, but they have to register. And in Africa, they have brought in this Social Workers Association of Zambia Act, and the advocacy policy brief on social work regulation legislation. So in every country, I have seen the government involvement in taking up the issues and protecting the social workers. In India, Tata Institute of Social Sciences brought professional social work into India. And that is the institute that is teaching and practicing social organization. After Tata Institute, there are many institutes that have come up and are doing very, very well in India, education-wise. No separate certificate is required to practice in India. No qualifying exam as in few countries. No skills testing for social workers. Social workers as professionals are recognized gradually of late in India. Prisons have also jumped in and employed professional social workers thanks to the Tamil Nadu Prison Department. After joining this department, after a decade or so, I had the opportunity of conversing with one of the DG prisons in Tamil Nadu, who had agreed to the proposal and appointed psychologists and made provision for appointment of social workers in prisons. As of now, we have around 10 social workers working in prisons and counselors who are professional social workers working on contracts in prisons. And the services of professional social workers are utilized by even police department for counseling family issues and adolescent issues. The project called Pattam is very active in Tamil Nadu Prisons Department. It is even the government of India. It was presented to the Honorable Home Minister, Government of India, and there has been plans to carry this program from Tamil Nadu to the whole of India. And family courts, of course, use the services of professional social workers in divorce-related issues and other family disputes. Even the police stations, they utilize the services of social workers in police stations. No professional bodies to register or regulate, accredit, license the profession in India. But Indian social workers are found to have high professional standards. And another ground reality is that less patronage from the central and state governments. Of course, there is recognition of this profession, and professional social workers are used in various social work organizations by the state and central governments. But standardizing the profession or giving security to the professional social workers, we found there is a lag in that towards that direction. And the social work is widely accepted in high and is in high demand in Western countries. That is what I found the ground reality. And most of the Indian students who do social work here in very good universities and colleges, they shift to Western countries since they are recognized very well in those countries because their job profile is very good. And also another ground reality is that I find specialization wise people are for example, a medical social worker with a community development background. So people also do not work according to their specialization and get into wherever they are able to get into. And my question is, are they developing their knowledge and updating their knowledge according to the field at least, or doing any certificate courses according to the field in which they are jumping in? And they feel better opportunities for career development in other countries, so they are shifting to other countries. And other countries have well-defined work timings. So what I feel is, not only in India, in many countries, there has to be a SOP set up for social workers, professional social workers. And of course, another ground reality we find is lack of support from the superiors and other timbers, because the awareness or knowledge about social workers in their team is not only less but also the social workers also do not prove themselves to be professionals when they are working in a team. I always say that in a university or a college, the social work department should lead the whole college. It is professionally we are little lagging. In many of the countries we see the professional social workers think that they work only for the poorest of the poor. It doesn't stop there. Of course, we have a vision and mission, but still, like Japan says, there are different levels of working for practice in social work. So the need which I found is specialized certification according to the elected field, skill development.
You'll have to wind up. You'll have to wind up, Beulah.
Sure, sir. Skill development need to be focused, sensitizing, awareness, and welfare board to care about the welfare of the social workers, and giving security to the social workers, and multidisciplinary training academies to be open for professional social workers. E-learning programs specific to skills has to be started. Prioritizing the increased changing demands of served population, distance learning, e-learning, social work programs should increase field practicum. And issues like Indianization of social workers or nativity content of social work curriculum and practice, and increasing the scope of social work practice in various settings, and mechanism to be developed, continuous evaluation of issues faced by the, to help the continuous issues faced by the practitioners, encouraging in the practice field. The happiest people I know are those who lose themselves in the service of others. And thank you very much for the opportunity. I thank my beloved professor, Dr. Selvin Stanley, for the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I thank my junior, Anand Jarad, also for getting me in. Thank you.
Thanks, Beulah. That was a good overview of social work in different countries like China and Zambia. It was good to see the work that you do and for highlighting some of the issues facing professional social work today. Well, friends, thank you for your patience. We have now reached the last segment planned for the day. And this is, I think, the most important session in terms of question and answers. I think you've heard enough of my voice. I will step back. And before I hand over the session to Anand Jarad, who is again a former student of mine, and I should say is a gem of a student, very dynamic, very versatile, very vibrant, and one of the students I'm really proud of for what he has achieved. And Anand Jarad Sebastian is an associate professor at the Periyar Maniamma Institute of Science and Technology, Tanjavur. He is also the director of Periyar Center for Rural Development, Pura, and the director for Childline. I think UK colleagues would know about Childline, and Childline India is modeled on the UK model. So he kind of directs, he's the director for Childline in Tanjavur, and he has been in the teaching profession for 14 years and a practitioner for 5 years. There's several publications to his credit. Only last week he has returned from Vietnam after participating in the Eurasian Conference of Social Work, having registered a rocking presence during the conference. So with these few words, Anand, I hand over the session to you to moderate and facilitate the interaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. It's again an honor for me to get introduced by you, because during the time of student, we all were very much afraid of the of our professor, Dr. Selvin Stanley, who was very strict, and now we know the real value of why he was so strict, and that has really helped us to grow like this. So thank you very much, sir. And without taking much of time, this is the time for interaction. And however, we have planned to conclude this session by 4:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 12 p.m. British Standard Time. So there is a very short time, and now I request the participants, if you have any questions, you can introduce yourself, unmute, introduce yourself, and you can ask the questions. The various speakers, you can also answer. And if this question is towards the students from UK, or if UK students want to ask some questions to the Indian social work students, we encourage you to ask questions. And if there is any suggestions, or if there is any practices which can be practiced in both these countries, you are all welcome. Thank you. Questions can also be posted in the chat box. Myself and Dr. Sylvain Stanley will be ready to read for you. Okay, there is a question from my hall itself, so I request the student to introduce and then ask the question.
Good evening. My name is Vetri from Periyar Maniamma University, and my question is to Dr. Paul Rimmer. I have two questions. I'll be posting one by one. And the first question is, what role does the Professional Social Work Association play in accreditation and standardization of social work educational institutions? And the second one is, among my knowledge, all foreign countries are very well developed compared to India. What makes high recruitment of social workers in abroad, like foreign countries like UK and well developed countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. In terms of accreditation, in the UK, we have Social Work England, which is our regulatory body. We have also an organisation called British Association of Social Workers, BASWA, which is our professional body. And people can join that on a voluntary basis and adhere to their ethical standards on a voluntary basis. In terms of the importance of accreditation, this is something that has evolved over the years. So, as my colleague Nigel Kelleher mentioned earlier on, it is actually unlawful in the UK to call yourself a social worker unless you've pursued a regulated programme. And in this case, it is the Social Work England regulated programme. And that, as I've already said, that's something that has evolved over the years, mainly in this country in the 1960s and 1970s, and became part of statute in this country in the early 2000s. And that, as I understand it, and in my opinion, is something that has gathered momentum as we have kind of gathered knowledge about social welfare, the delivery of social welfare, high-profile homicides in relation to children, high-profile homicides in relation to adults and adult mental health, and some of the safeguarding issues that go with that. In terms of the challenges of recruitment for the social work role, particularly in this country, the social work role is demanding. It's can be a very emotionally demanding role, but also very rewarding as well. It sits within the wider context of local government, and therefore a socio-economic and political context, which I will often say to my students that, they need to understand the context of social work in a socio-economic and political context, but also, within a global context, and particularly more recently in relation to the challenges thrown up by COVID, the global pandemic, and that has certainly changed social work practice and the kind of the demands of the social work role. Would you mind just asking the second part of the question again, because you referred to about countries of wealth?
like all the foreign countries are very well developed. Like we compare to India, every foreign countries are very much developed in a state. So what makes the like being a developed country, what makes abroad countries to highly recruit social workers even after developing?
I think that there are certainly challenges with developing countries and countries that are developed. I think one of the challenges of working or delivering social welfare within the context of an advanced capitalist society is the application of market principles to those to that delivery, and people's needs can be infinite whilst resources can be finite, and if you look towards developing countries, they may be destined to develop towards, whether we agree with that or not, towards being a capitalist society, because and I think some of the challenges are inherent in the thing about the problems associated with developing societies or developed societies. And we've seen that over the years in the history in this country in terms of what's happened during the Industrial Revolution, going back in history, a couple of hundred years ago, people coming from towns and cities, from villages and from the countryside to cities. And once you introduce finance and to the equation, I think that's when we start to see even more social problems develop. I think this is also inherently linked to states, to countries like places like India in terms of mental health and well-being. Despite those being developing countries, often in those countries, the rates of mental illness and mental disorder are far lower than those in developed states. So to my mind, there's a direct correlation between living in an advanced capitalist society and developed states and the onset of mental illness. I mean, obviously that's part of a wider discussion, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So, thank you, Dr. Paul, for the wonderful explanation for the question, and it is also indeed a good question from Vetri. And one of the question which arised here is regarding the placements. Probably the practitioners who are presented, they can answer for this thing. Particularly in India, the fieldwork placements were in different field settings, probably in NGOs, some government organizations, quasi-government organizations like that. What about the fieldwork placements in UK, and how and who monitors the students' fieldwork activity? Here in India, mostly the fieldwork practices are monitored by the faculty itself. How about the practice in UK?
Do any UK students want to respond to that?
That will be great if students answer.
We have a student with us who's a final year student, and I'm going to nominate her if she doesn't mind. She's called Catherine Lander, and she's a final year nursing and social work student. Are you with us, Catherine?
Welcome.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah. Sorry, it broke up during the thing, so could you just repeat?
So, in short, it's how are our placements monitored when you're out in practice?
Oh, so throughout, it's different depending on which placements you're on, really. But throughout the social work side, we have regular contacts and supervisions with our practice educators, regular contacts with our personal tutors back at the university, as well as some practice contact days, which it means that all of us get back together, can have a really good conversation about what difficulties we might be facing, things like that, and really get to know about different placement areas. And then from a nursing side as well, we've got 2 professionals out on placement, and then probably less contact than in the social work side, but now that we're out on the integrated, we get to combine the best of both worlds. So they get regulated through the supervisions and through practice contact days, which means it really helps with our portfolios, which we use as evidence for these as well.
Well, thank you, Kat. And at the same time, here in India, most of the organizations where the students are placed, particularly in the non-government organizations, the people who are the field supervisors, they are not professional social workers. However, they do a great job in the field. But when it comes to the point of professionalism, training the people by a professional social worker makes a difference. That is very much lacking over here. How about the situation there in UK?
Yeah, so I think that, yeah, I can see how that would be quite a difficult challenge, really, because our practice educators, the people that are in the field with us, are qualified and generally have quite a wealthy amount of experience from my experience with working with them. And it's been great to use different knowledge bases from them in terms of you get a range of supervisions where they can give you different theories that you maybe haven't thought about and help you with reflecting on your own practice in different ways. So I think it's really beneficial having that experience from them.
Good, thank you. I encourage students who are attending from different parts of India, they can also ask some questions if you have. And one question has come from the chat. This is with regard to the specializations in PG diploma in UK, whether UK has any specialization in PG diploma courses.
I think Nigel can talk about that.
I could, but I missed the question. Could you ask me again? Sorry.
Yeah. The thing is, the specializations, what type of specialization is offered in PG diploma in social work?
Okay, so across England, there are a number of postgraduate diploma social work courses, and all of them are generic. So all of them prepare a graduate to work as a child and family social worker, an adult social worker, or a mental health social worker. They're generic because the regulations around social work education in England say they have to be generic. In reality, there are a growing number of postgraduate diploma and social work courses that are 90% focused on children and families social work, and another one 90% focused on mental health social work. They have to still demonstrate to the regulator that they're generic, but all the examples that they'll use, all the placements that they'll use will feed into that specialism. So they're not officially specialized. You can't qualify as an officially specialized social work in one field or another, because all the courses have to be generic. But there is a direction of travel now to create more specialist graduates, and the areas are children and families and mental health. So I hope that answers the question.
Nigel, do you mind if I just jump in and say, on a post-qualifying basis, there are a small number of routes in relation to specialist mental health social work, which is an approved mental health professional, and Best Interests Assessor Award. But historically, there've also been similar routes. But Nigel has very much given an overview of the sort of pre-qualifying, pre-registration routes. I mean, postgraduate, in terms of postgraduate provision, there is limited provision, but it's usually restricted to statutory roles in mental health. So, sorry to add to that, really. Thank you.
Well, even though we are running short of time, some of the questions, very important questions, are popping up. So kindly bear with us with some few more questions. One question is from Edil, J. Edil. What is the role of social workers in policy framing and providing suggestions to government regarding child-centered and child-friendly approaches at UK? Should I read it again?
Yeah, do you want me to answer this one?
Okay.
Guys, I can probably answer this one. There's lots of different forums, Adil. Social Work England are setting up, for example, Social Work England being the new regulator of social workers in England, they're setting up a social work advisory board for social work education. And they have recently invited expressions of interest. Again, I'm party to some of the people who are being appointed and not being appointed. So my organisation, the Association of Child Protection Professionals, expressed an interest in joining that advisory board, and we were turned down. And you know, that was about promoting child-centred practice. I think that we have a principal children and family social worker in England, and that came after the Monroe Review of Child Protection, and in theory, they advocate for child-centred practice, and they are a link between practitioners on the front line and our government organisations. I think that must be a very difficult role for them to do, and I think that link is not as successful as practicing social workers would always want. And then I think, you know, research, discussion, policy, forums, conferences like this, and sometimes it's about putting implicit as opposed to explicit pressure on government departments to make different decisions and include social workers more in. I would say historically we've had social workers in government. We don't at the moment. That's tended to be aligned to a Labour government in the UK. I remember Bev Hughes was Children's Minister under Tony Blair's government, was a children and family social worker. She had some strange policies as well, but we have done in the past. So lots of different things, I think, would be a short answer to your question. Nigel, have you got anything to add about that? Because Nigel's very clued up on this stuff.
Yeah.
Just really briefly, so thanks for inviting me. But as Kieran said, there's lots of different groups and organisations that are trying to feed the social work voice into policy making. But it is really interesting that we have a fairly recent innovation in England, this post of chief social worker for children and families and a chief social worker for adult social workers who shuttle between that policy level and kind of practice leadership level. And even though they're both social workers, the direction they're heading in is very different. And I think what that tells us is there's a lot of tension around the right direction for professional social work in England at the moment.
That's right. We are getting a lot of ideas, insights about the practices and some of the things in England. I hope this will be helpful for us and also for our students. And one more question. How can we revitalize social work in correctional programs in social work education in India? What is the scope for this specialization in UK? So one question is related to India and another one is related to UK. Probably I think Beulah can answer for this. Dr. Beulah?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the question. How can we revitalize social work in correctional programs in social work education in India?
That's
Of
right.
course, Tata Institute of Social Work has got the program, correctional criminology and correctional social work. The term correctional social work is taken away, but correctional administration is common. So that also means correctional social work education. It is already there. A few universities, few colleges also have this, but it is linked to criminology and criminal justice administration, criminal justice social work. So maybe it may appear like it's a criminology subject, but it is a social work education.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
The scope for this may be from UK, we can hear.
Yeah.
I'll contribute a little bit from the UK point of view. So there isn't a specialism in relating to social work with people who have committed criminal offending, but there's been a lot of focus on young people who are on the edge of criminal offending or have started to criminally offend. And we have a youth justice board who, for a long time, had to wrestle with whether we looked at those young people as children and young people first and offenders second, or we focused on the offending first and we recognised their age second. And that really was an important question because it kind of it underpins the philosophy of how you work with these people and what you're trying to achieve. There has been a shift in the last couple of years where it's clearer now that the fact that they're a child and a young person comes before the offending. But that is a controversial subject in England and not a shared view by any means. But that is the direction now. So within the kind of public services structure, we have something called Youth Offending Services then, where we have social workers in there who become very expert in the criminal justice system for children and young people. And they're there to make sure that there's a social work perspective brought in to the decision making and support around those children and young people. There was also a project, for some of those children and young people end up being incarcerated, right? So in prison, locked up because of the level of risk. But there was a project by the Youth Justice Board of funded social workers being placed in the prisons that detain children and young people. Anecdotally, from what I saw of it, it was very hit and miss. The difference an individual social worker could make in that really, really powerful organizational system that is a prison was small. It added value and it brought a social work perspective into those very punitive systems very well in a minority of cases, in my view. In the majority of cases, I think it got swamped by the punitive criminal mindset more than it should have. That's what I'd say.
Thank you.
If I can add to that, we do have made a lot of progress in dealing with young offenders or children in conflict with law these days. I think the laws related to children have been really revised and made very, very sensitive. And social workers really have played a role in that. They serve on the juvenile justice boards as well as in the child welfare committees. They really sit and ensure that there's a lot of sensitivity of the lawmakers and all those judges and so on when dealing with children.
And I'd like to add something to this young offenders. In India, in one state, we have separated young offenders from prison. We are running a separate program for them, not like a prison routine. So it is a 10-day module in which the recidivism rate has come to 0.02. It's a very successful program.
Okay. due to running short of time, I want to conclude with one question. Probably the people who have asked or posted questions, kindly excuse us, since from the beginning we have been telling we are sticking on to the time. So if you have any specific questions, you can definitely mail us, and we will definitely get the answers for you from the resource persons who have been giving us their thoughts today, and it will be shared among our group. So the last and final question is by Sahana. Is there any exams to practice as a professional social worker? Probably, I think this question was posted like in Beulah's presentation and even Dr. Raja Samuel's presentation. We made it clear that India, we don't have national council for social workers, which is very, very important. And there is no such things to regulate and practice social work in India. However, after completing MSW, we can claim that we are professional social workers. There is no exams or there is no tool to what to say to tell that we are real professional social workers with all skills to handle the issues and problems. Is there anything, any entrance exam in UK for any professional social workers? Or else, if an Indian come to UK for a job, whether he has to undergo any entrance exam? So this is the question. Maybe probably anybody from UK can answer this. Thank you.
I think I'll take that because I have been through this process, and Dr. Raja Samuel is aware that I was writing to him about my transcripts from my student days, about my grades. So the only thing is that the Indian degree, the Indian social work degree, you have to get an equivalence over here. You have to show that you have done the required number of placement hours, you've done the required number of modules, and you have to evidence that your degree is on par with the UK degree, after which you will get registered with Social Work England, or in my case, when I came in, it was with the Scottish Registration Council. So it's a matter of establishing equivalence. There is no examination or test other than what is required for all students from India coming to the UK, all students, which is the IAELTS. You have to have a score of, I think, 7 or 7.5 to establish English proficiency. Other than that, I'm not aware of any prerequisite for entry or practice of social work in the UK.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Anand, if there are no more questions, I think we can taper off with a vote of thanks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I think we are now on the last part, which is always a very important part in India, saying word of thanks. And this is indeed a great honor and pleasure for me to place my word of thanks in this historic event which happened today, that is observing of World Social Work Day, that too with esteemed institution from UK, Edge Hill University. And this is our Periyar Maniamai Institute of Science and Technology takes a privilege in thanking all the special speaker, particularly Dr. Murphy, Associate Head of Social Work and Wellbeing, Edge Hill University, and the speakers of the subtopic issues in social work education, Dr. Paul Rimmer from Edge Hill University, and our beloved Professor Dr. Raja Samuel from Madras School of Social Work, Chennai, and other two speakers from Issues in Social Work Practices, Dr. Nigel from HL University, and our Dr. Beulah Emmanuel from Academy of Prisons and Correctional Administration. And I also thank our university, Honorable Vice Chancellor, respectful Registrar, Dean Academics, and all the our school dean, and also my department head, Dr. Parameswaran. And I also thank Dr. Jnanaraj and Mr. Dhanabal for helping me to organize this program in spite of my not physically present for the past 1 week. They have arranged everything, and this is a great thing they have done for me. And I also thank all my students who have been vibrantly working, and some of our students were in the block placement, and they have also come down to attend this program. I thank our second year MSW students and also our first MSW students. And I also thank the technical team for the wonderful work they have done today, particularly Mr. Gauri Sankar and Navnitha Krishnan for all the technical part they have taken care. And I also thank Mr. Radha who has done a wonderful job, particularly related to the PA system arrangements. And last but not least, I would like to thank my beloved professor, Dr. Selvin Stanley, who is a person who has not only taught social work and left me alone after completing my MSW. He has been a constant support, a motivator, and he is always an inspiration to all the students. And still now it goes on. From there also, he used to encourage, motivate, and even still be a strict professor in making me to do the things which is assigned to us. For this program, it has been meticulously planned even 1 month back, and all the posters, everything was checked, and then it is released. So I thank my Professor Dr. Selvin Stanley for giving me this opportunity, and also collaborating with our institution. With a final note of remarks, I would like to tell all the people from HL University that this is the second event we have done, and in future also we would like to collaborate in a research aspect, exchange of students, exchange of faculty, and whatever possible that can add knowledge to our professional social work, we are ready to collaborate. With these few words, I thank all the participants also for being present here, particularly Mother Teresa Women's University Kodaikanal, Madras School of Social Work, Jawaharlal Institute of Postgraduate, that is JIGMER, Pondicherry, and Nehru Arts and Science College, Coimbatore, Rajas College, Thiruviyaru, Kaveri College for Women, Jamal Muhammad College, Dr. Ambedkar Government Arts College, Child Fund India, NESCO's Malawi, and friends from Indonesia, UK, and from Vietnam for joining in this program. And thank you very much. Have a nice day. Let us do a great thing in our profession. Let us wind up with a motto theme of this year: respecting diversity through joint social action. Thank you very much.
I'm so sorry for interfering. I'd like to thank the correctional social workers who have joined from various central prisons in India. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry for not mentioning. Thank you so much for the prison department who has been really from the beginning they have been listening to this event, and also all the practitioners from different part of the globe who has joined here. Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Team India. Well done.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
One more information. The feed